Lightyear is a waste. It's a waste of time, it's a waste of effort, a waste of money. This movie, more than any other Pixar film, baffles me. When the pandemic hit in 2020, theaters closed down, and the studio's movies had to go directly to streaming. This made many of Pixar's films bombs by default, as they couldn't possibly turn a profit. And with Disney getting into more and more trouble with its other projects and controversies, theaters reopening in 2022 was a glimmer of hope that the corporate entity desperately needed. And Lightyear reeks of that desperation. Just from the outset, it is the most obvious, calculated move that they could have done. Despite whatever you think of Toy Story 4, every single one of the entries in the franchise has been popular and very profitable. The series is baked into Pixar's identity, and so if you want to press the print money button, you make something Toy Story. You can't make a direct sequel because of the way Toy Story 4 ended, theoretically, so your next best option is to make a spin-off in the Toy Story franchise. It did work 2 decades ago. It should have been the surest thing imaginable. It's safe. Safe is the thing that Pixar is the worst at. When I think of safe Pixar, my mind is drawn immediately to the Cars franchise. Good or bad, a Cars movie will always be successful because it appeals to kids, and even if the movie bombs, critically or commercially, it will be elevated by toy sales and spin-offs. When Pixar plays it safe, we get films like A Bug's Life, which you probably forgot even existed until I mentioned it. Or you get Brave, a movie that tried its damnedest to capture the Disney princess formula, and in the end it made it the worst Disney princess film. Maybe I'm being harsh. Lightyear certainly does have its ambitions. It's a hard science fiction film, which is difficult to do at the best of times. But because it's a Pixar film, it's something you have to make appealing to kids and families as well, which is really difficult to do. Pixar did have WALL-E before this, which took place in outer space and had some science fiction concepts like a generation ship, but WALL-E is soft science fiction. Soft science fiction has all the space or time travel or what have you, but it's just an excuse to tell a story, and they don't really follow these hard scientific concepts. Think Star Wars or Back to the Future. Hard science fiction explores these theoretical concepts in hard science. It tries to get closer to a theoretical reality and takes concepts to see how they'd realistically play out. These are our Star Treks. In this film's case, we're playing a lot with time, dilation, and travel, which is the diversion point between arrogance and ambition. Even a novice will tell you to stay away from time travel unless you know exactly what you're doing. And spoiler alert, they do not know exactly what they're doing. Lightyear has been called soulless. It's devoid of charm, interesting characters, a point. I'm calling it more than that. This is the worst animated science fiction film that I have ever seen. This includes Chicken Little, Mars Needs Moms, Titan AE, Home. Why are there so many bad science fiction animated movies? The movie doesn't work is what I'm saying, on any level. And let's start with the bare basics. Lightyear is the ugliest Pixar film. That sounds like a weird complaint because this is Pixar. It's the name that is synonymous with good animation. The technicals are fine. The computers all work and did what the animators wanted them to do. It is a completely put-together film, unlike Mars Needs Moms, which is uncanny and horrible. Lightyear suffers from bad art direction, not bad art quality. What do I mean? The color palette of this film is god-awful. So much of this movie is just fucking orange. Golden Hour can look quite pretty. Twilight Princess, for example, had a lot of settings that really did use the lighting effectively. It doesn't work when it is the whole movie. Any part of this film that's not soaked in orange juice is in this ugly blue. It gives you the impression that you're sitting under an irritating fluorescent light. So much of this movie takes place in dark rooms without much set dressing. Outdoor areas take place in these abandoned wastelands of a planet. They make outer space look boring. Like, there's the scenes where it's just a character that looks like they're lying under a starry night, like on Earth. A boring one filled with light pollution. Planets, supernovas, moons, asteroids, space junk. You could put any of these things here and it would make sense. No, instead you have these sets that are just so devoid of anything. At times, it feels like there are assets missing. Here's what space is supposed to look like in a Pixar film. Here's what space looks like in Bluey, a show made for preschoolers. Here's what space looks like in Lightyear, a film from the best animation company in the world. The facilities we explore look sterile, drab, and boring. And while Mars Needs Moms has the worst animation, it has the better set design, by a mile. The colony that Buzz is in looks like the most generic sci-fi city that I have ever seen in my life. Maybe this is a nitpick, but the video game opening of Toy Story 2 had so much more color than anything we see in Lightyear. And that's not even mentioning the Buzz Lightyear cartoon. You might be able to excuse these barren wastelands if the movie took place on, like, Venus or Mars, but the initial conflict of the film is that Buzz and the other Space Rangers are being attacked by a jungle of wild alien animals and plants. Like, for the first half of the movie, there's this annoying running gag where there's this living vine that keeps attacking people. There are so many ways that you can make an alien planet look unique and interesting. This is one of the reasons that the Avatar movies did so well. They created this bioluminescent jungle. But no, instead we get rocks. Lots and lots of rocks. Halo 1 came out in 2001. Here's where its alien planet looked like. Star Wars came out in 1977. Here's where some of its planets look like. Beyond Good and Evil. Titan AE. Strange World. Strange World. Fucking Strange World. Pac-Man World. Makes space look better than this 2022 Pixar film. At this point, I'm just listing things because I can list literally everything else that has ever taken place in outer space. Someone at some point should have stopped and said, wow, this looks like shit. Actually, no, shit looks more interesting than the bland wastelands you're creating. I'd rather stare at the default desktop backgrounds for Windows XP for 2 hours than look at this movie. But beauty is only crust deep. Let's get into the mantle, the plot. Alright, like Toy Story 4, Lightyear also has 2 major portions. The opening half hour and the actual fucking movie. Once again, they're 2 parts that don't really gel well together, even visually. At the start, we can see all kinds of forests and such on this alien planet. Later on in the movie, it's all gone. Just wasteland. And you could explain it by the Space Rangers deforesting everything to not use the land and build stone and metal complexes and literally nothing out of wood. But why are you defending Lightyear? More pertinent is that we're introduced to a bunch of characters in the first 30 minutes that, spoilers, will all be dead. Buzz's commanding officer Hawthorne is kind of sort of relevant for the rest of the movie, and we'll get to that. But then you have the rookie, Feathering Ham Spam here. They give him character traits, a unique design, a name. Like, in a real movie, this would be an established character that we follow throughout the entire film. You could argue that he's here to show that Buzz isn't exactly good at dealing with people who aren't born and bred into the Space Rangers. This is Buzz's major conflict in the movie proper, but it's just so McClunky. This is not how you do this, establishing a character to show off someone else's character trait and then have that character die. Just like Toy Story 4, Lightyear is particularly good at wasting times on things that do not matter, because no one seems to know how to integrate a plot together anymore. And on Buzz's character, it is so horribly inconsistent. So the idea is that Buzz takes completing the mission too seriously.
You will never quit, whatever the galaxy may throw your way. Will you please turn that off?
It's just too easy.
Because that's what we want out of our astronauts, real or fictional, for them to not take this being in a distant world seriously. The start of this movie is just a series of quick succession bombs. Buzz is recording his mission logs.
You were narrating again.
I was not. Just doing the mission log.
You do know no one ever listens to those.
I know that.
Then what the fuck are you doing in space? What is the point of being a space explorer of any kind? Seeing things firsthand and then not telling people back at base camp so they don't know how to set up proper colonies? Or, you know, what to watch out for there? For a quick-handed joke, it does a surprising amount of damage to the premise already. Buzz is the only one who ever takes anything seriously, which the movie considers his problem that he needs to get over. Which would be fine and good, except that the movie's about everyone being marooned in space. If I was marooned somewhere, I'd be appreciative that someone was spending every waking moment, I don't know, doing their fucking job! The movie right out of the gate jacks some lines directly from the Toy Story franchise just to remind you that you're actually watching a Toy Story film.
Terrain seems a bit unstable. No readout yet if the air is breathable. There seems to be no sign of intelligent life anywhere.
But it only serves to remind you that this isn't Buzz, because real Buzz never had a problem with people that weren't Space Rangers. In Toy Story 1, he got along with and accepted help from the other toys who knew nothing about Space Rangers, and complimented Rex's playthrough of the video game in Toy Story 2. This does show how serious Buzz is about doing something like he was in the Toy Story films, but once again, the movie sees that as a problem because I guess we hate literally everything about the past now. So Jumanji happens, and then it's decided that they need to get the hell out of Dodge, because no one read the previous mission log where people said to maybe bring fire to this planet, and bug spray. Buzz fires a few shots, but then he decides that he doesn't want to make gunplay look cool, and actually reload the fucking thing, so he abandons a piece of tech on an alien planet. The Space Rangers then go into stealth mode, and that does literally nothing. Also, Buzz doesn't know what words mean.
Sentient foliage have apprehended Cadet Feathering.
Vines are not foliage. Leaves are foliage, dumbass. Was that a fucking Wilhelm scream? Here's the rule about Wilhelm screams. Unless you're making a silly cartoon, and this is not trying to be a silly cartoon, the proper amount of times to use the Wilhelm scream is less than 0. As in, you need to actually go back in time and find another piece of art that tried to use the Wilhelm scream and remove it from the production. Please remove the Wilhelm screams from the Lord of the Rings films is what I'm saying, because it takes me out of this experience every fucking time. Now the plot gets really confusing, like 10 minutes in. I've watched this movie more than I care to admit, but it starts throwing things that I can't really make sense of. So Buzz tries to get off the planet. He refuses the rookie's help, granted, but the rookie is a clueless idiot that should have never graduated Space Academy. Buzz is told that the trajectory of the ship is bad, and it does cause him to crash, and this is his big mistake that he's trying to atone for the rest of the movie. So I have to ask, because what was Buzz's alternative here? To not try to escape and just sit the ship in park and get eaten by vines and bugs? Because that is literally the only other option that is presented to us. And the rest of the movie goes on and on, trying to make it seem like that would have been the correct option.
Collision imminent. Abort.
Yeah, just put the ship in park right over there, Buzz. I'm sure it'll be fine. Or was the mistake that he should have accepted help from the rookie? You know, the dipshit hanging for his life right there.
Do you need my help?
Negative!
Are you sure?
I'm Buzz Lightyear! I'm always sure!
Also, side note, Buzz is fucking unlikable in this movie. So, the turnip gets a paper cut, and apparently $20 billion to NASA funding can't resist a goddamn pebble.
Commander Hawthorne, I hereby relieve myself of all Space Ranger duties. This was my fault.
How? What else could have been done? Buzz disables the autopilot, sure, but autopilot doesn't make a ship turn harder. This movie hasn't thought of anything, I swear to God. It's just a hodgepodge of half-thought-out ideas.
Finish the mission, Buzz. That's what we do. We're not done until everyone gets home.
Okay, was this like a transport ship? Everyone else was frozen in cryosleep except 3 people, so I have to assume something like that. Why did you land on an uninhabited planet in the middle of nowhere if that was the case?
We have no fuel crystal.
So we mine the resources on this planet. Create a new crystal.
Crystallic fusion is highly unstable.
Then why? How? How are you using it in the first place? What are you doing here? What is this? What is your motivation, soldier?
Sensors have detected potential life forms on an uncharted planet, so we're making a detour to investigate.
I have a mighty need to use the restroom once again.
I understand that I'm getting hung up on this, but like...
These are the voyages of the Starship Enterprise. Its continuing mission to explore strange new worlds, to seek out new life and new civilizations.
2 sentences, 30 seconds. Did you not have 30 seconds available? No, you needed to quote Toy Story and act like a dumbass. A lot of people call this movie soulless, and while that is accurate, that's not the word that I'd use. The word is clueless, because they have the same attitude with the small stuff that they have towards the big stuff. I call things first draft a lot, especially lately. But if there's any film on Earth that I will guarantee you was made in one singular go, it has to be Lightyear. To infinity and beyond, never looking back to course correct. So, in this part of the film, Buzz is testing hyperspeed. Keep in mind, hyperspeed must have been how they got to this planet. Faster than light travel. Buzz has to know intimately how this process works. So he tests it for the first time, and this slingshots him 4 years into the future. Because this movie has time dilation. Why does this movie have time dilation? How stupid? Let me explain, and I'll do it as slowly as I can. The Space Rangers use hyperspeed to get from planet to planet.
Our hyperspeed crystal was totally destroyed.
That is established. They're trying to make the same crystal that was destroyed in the crash. This hyperspeed is how they got here where they were marooned. In this scene, hyperspeed is established to dilate time. It's explained to Buzz in detail because, as a space ranger who has been traveling at hyperspeed, he doesn't know one of the most rudimentary astrophysics concepts, I guess. Within one star system, Buzz went forward into the future. For him, it was like 5 minutes. For everyone on the planet, it was 4 years. This is one star system. Other planets, other galaxies, their destination has to be light years away. Light years. Get it? It's the name of the movie. It's the name of the movie. And if you think that's hilarious, here's the premise of the film. The main drive of the characters is to get home, light years away, using a process that dilates time. The movie was over before it begins. They lost. They lose. They are losers. They are failures.
It's all there, black and white, clear as crystal. You get nothing. You lose. Good day, sir.
Before they even fucking crash landed. Home, the home they are trying to get to, was hundreds, if not thousands of years ago. Because you wanted to use goddamn time dilation. There is literally no way for these characters to be successful in what they are trying to do. It'd be one thing if Buzz was trying to get a different method of faster than light travel working. But no, it's established it's the exact same one. Why is this man having time dilation explained to him? He should fucking know. He's a fucking space ranger. And yes, this is hard science fiction. Time dilation is a real thing that really exists. But it is one of those concepts that even hard sci-fi tends to ignore, because unless you're doing something specific with it, time dilation kinda ruins the story. Like the speed of light being the hard limit on how fast you can go. Speaking of relativity, you know that quote attributed to Einstein? The definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again, expecting things to change. You know what Buzz does for 60 fucking years? The same thing. Over and over and over again. Nothing changes. Literally nothing changes. If you want to be as generous as possible, you could say that he's altering the formula, kind of taking repeated stabs in the dark. But when 4 years is on the line every single time, you want something a little bit more guaranteed than a stab in the dark. And he knows this isn't going to work, because he gets his robot cat, because there's a robot cat in this now, to work on the problem. So he knows that there's a large chance this isn't going to keep working. So Buzz just keeps time traveling to the future with something that he knows isn't going to work. To the point where I can only assume this is intentional. I can only assume that Buzz is so ashamed for breaking the ship that he just wants to go to the future where no one else remembers his mistake because they're all fucking dead now. Buzz sees everyone around him grow up older and older, and until Hawthorne is dead, it doesn't really faze him, because he's a sociopath. I don't know, it just makes him seem colder than the murky depths of space. Any human being on Earth, it'd psychologically screw you the fuck up if you saw your best friend age throughout their entire life in the span of a week. And if they really are your friend, they tell you to fucking stop. This is the definition of madness. Let's talk about Hawthorne for a minute, by the way. Like many other Disney films, there is piecemeal representation. A small scene of LGBT representation that was intended to be cut out for international releases. Compounded with Hawthorne's granddaughter only ever mentioning a single grandmother, it's like the film itself is trying to make the audience forget about this one lesbian kiss before it's over. The scene in this montage was cut for a time at the behest of Disney executives, but internal and external backlash got them to restore it, even for international releases for once. This did get the movie banned in 14 different countries, subsequently causing Disney proper to blame this film's LGBT content for its financial failure. Well, let's start with the obvious here. Lightyear was always doomed to be a failure no matter what. It is a thoroughly unlikable film, and that's what all of the marketing communicated. While Toy Story 4 was a success, it was and is a divisive film that made people at large more skeptical of the Toy Story franchise, and a spin-off like this would always look like a cheap cash-in. And you could argue that even in 2022, people were still hesitant to return to the theaters. Lightyear was a film doomed to failure, regardless of it having LGBT content or not. From the outside, because they didn't cut this scene, this can seem like a step forward in LGBT representation for Disney. Except it's exactly the same as live-action Beauty and the Beast, a small piecemeal scene that was designed to be removed, regardless if it was or not. And honestly, I don't think this is particularly good representation, due to the particular strategy that it uses. This is almost a textbook example of an outdated trope called barrier gaze. Personally, I'm not the best expert on this. If I can find some sources, I'll put it in the description, but this is something that people used to do a long time ago. Here's the hallmarks of it. Gay characters are much more expendable in the work of fiction than straight characters. In this movie, the only named character with a confirmed death is Hawthorne. It's usually done to get around censorship. like Disney likes to do. Or so you can say you have a gay character in your story without carrying them to the end of the story. It usually happens off-screen, shortly after they find and get with their partner. Also, their death is used as motivation for a straight character and develop their arc, which is what happens in Lightyear. It may not be one-to-one as the trope usually goes, as the death is usually portrayed as violent, but it feels like just the apex of Disney's worst traits. They could have just as easily made Hawthorne's granddaughter gay instead. But that's not corporate enough for the company that doesn't give a damn about true progress. This movie came out after Strange World. There is no excuse to have one easily censorable LGBT scene in your movie, and there's no reason to be giving Disney a pass for this anymore. We shouldn't be fighting so hard for 5 seconds of a movie. We should be so much further along by now. Speaking of further along, after 60 goddamn years, the program thing the Buzz is doing is cancelled. And this guy, Commander Dipshit, says, you know what? We're staying on this goddamn uninhabitable planet in the middle of nowhere for no reason.
We've decided we're gonna go ahead and stay right here.
Wait, here? Negative, that is not a viable option.
It is now.
Don't you guys have somewhere to be? Isn't someone looking for you? The hell is a Star Command? I can't get my boat working, so I'm just gonna chill in Antarctica for the rest of my goddamn life. And my children's life, and my children's children's life. They're gonna be cool with it. I made a pun.
I've got some good news, Buzz. I figured out the fuel problem.
What?
Maybe you should have done that before Buzz tried to test the fuel 24 times. What is this movie? Why does nothing make sense? Why does no one do anything logical at any point? It's held together by silly putty and wet farts, I swear to God. Some government goons want to kill a cat, but because we need some McDonald's merchandise, Buzz says no and jumps out the window. The goons aim guns at Buzz, but then they decide not to fire at the running fugitive because,
Remember, licking doorknobs is illegal on other planets.
Yeah, sure, let's go with that. It's as good reason as any.
Buzz, my programming compels me to notify Star Command that you have gone...
Star Command was gonna decommission you.
Do you have, like, a radio to Star Command? Or is there just some guy who declared himself king say, forget about the old Star Command, I'm Star Command now. Look, you explain time dilation. I expect you to explain your own fucking lore, okay? Buzz then makes his favorite flavor of a smoothie and goes into the future. Because why the fuck not? He has some help from the cat.
Just come on, we're sitting ducks here. Allow me.
He overrode my override.
Ow! Beep boop, beep boop, beep.
Why does the emotional support robot have the highest level of security clearance? Unless Hawthorne was playing 5D chess and knew that a replacement was gonna doom everyone. That'd be cool if it was the case. But once again, it's never established. Anyway, Buzz comes back to robots and a brand new set of characters. We're 33 minutes into a 90-minute film, by the way. This is bizarrely late to introduce an entire cast of characters. But let's see what we have here. The villain, Buzz Lightyear, the evil Emperor Buzz Lightyear, the not father of Buzz Lightyear, Zurg. Alright, I'm twisting the twist a little early here, but I think it's important. Zurg wants help from Buzz, for reasons that we'll get to. And because of this, he decides to try to greet Buzz wearing an evil suit of armor, because that's how diplomacy works. Remember how we complained that Hans was smiling under the boat even though no one was watching but the audience? Remember before Disney decided to double down on literally all of their problems and get worse in the decade since that happened? Frozen is a decade old, by the way. I reiterate, Zurg Buzz wants Buzz's help. So what's with the Darth Vader getup? Or is this an inside joke that Buzz tells himself in case he ever meets himself in time traveling? Meanwhile, Buzz meets our proper teammates that really don't matter. They barely do anything for the film. We have Izzy here. Her character trait is that she's not as cool as her grandmother, and constantly reminds you that the movie would be better if Hawthorne Prime were a main character in the movie instead of her. Then you have Mo. He is the worst character in the entire film. His main character trait is fucking things up. Literally, until the last moment, virtually everything he does makes things worse and causes conflict for no reason. The only reason that he's not the worst character in history is because he's in Lightyear, and you cannot kill something that is already dead. Darby is the only character in the entire movie that comes even close to being remotely likable. She's this ex-con that's on parole, and she's constantly blowing shit up, and she's like the only person who ever knows remotely what they're doing. She brings some charm and humor to this dull-as-dishwater movie, and might be very well the only reason that I like this movie more than Toy Story 4. I get what they're trying to go for here. The premise of the movie is that Buzz needs to learn how to tolerate stupidity. This is a very stupid universe, and anyone who isn't on the page that stupid is the only way to proceed must change. But on a second thought, maybe that's a stupid idea. Maybe this whole movie is stupid. The next 20 minutes of this movie is largely just filler that doesn't really add up to anything. It also has so many painfully bad moments. Like, let's talk about the surrender button.
That's the surrender string. You never pull that.
Then why the fuck do you have one? Why is it on your chest in a super easy to access place? The Buzz Lightyear toy, both in real life and in the Toy Story films, uses that button to release its wings, because that's something that you would want in such an easily accessible place. Why don't these Space Ranger suits have wings, by the way? Is it because it would be too hard to write in a plot where your characters have the ability to fly? Is that it? The suits, as is, are tonally inconsistent to the rest of the film. It's like if Matt Damon was wearing neon pink track pants and a snorkel in Interstellar. Accuracy to the Toy Story franchise is literally the only excuse you have as to why these suits look like they were built for toys, which means they're pretty much required to be as accurate as possible. The surrender button basically turns the Space Ranger into a raspberry, and why? Like, what does... Okay, let's go back to school. Not Space Ranger Academy, 4th grade English. What does the word surrender mean? What the hell does releasing a flotation device have to do with surrender? Seriously. When I think of surrender in a Space Ranger context, I'd assume that it should communicate something to someone who can understand what surrender means. That it shows that you are no longer a threat. You know, the iconic white flag. This is closer to like an airbag. If I crash into the tree and the airbag deploys, that doesn't mean I surrender to the tree. I'm nitpicking, yes, but it is just such a bafflingly broken moment. And you get a new one of these moments every few minutes.
This isn't working! We have to turn around!
It is working perfectly fine. You are almost at the fucking door. And this raspberry thing is crushing literally every bug in your way. I can literally not think of a way for this to be working any better than it is. What is not working about it to you? I legitimately do not know what the fuck you're talking about. You can't just say it's not working because you want the characters to turn around. You have to show us that it is legit not working, and you are showing the exact opposite of that.
I can't see anything.
Oh no, the dark side of the planet!
We only use the phrase dark side of the planet if something is tidally locked. And if the planet you're on is tidally locked, the day area would be a fucking inferno and the night area would be too freezing to even breathe on. This is the place you want to settle on forever. How does this ball of death have life of any kind? Is that another nitpick? Sure, but think of it this way. She did not have to say the dark side of the planet. This could have been corrected and written out entirely. It doesn't cause the audience to have any questions if the ship crashes in just nighttime. The only thing including this line does is show how incompetent you are at science fiction and how eager you are to throw in space concepts that you do not understand. But the worst moment of this entire film for me is the sandwich. In our Space Ranger future, people will be studying this joke and explain how it's exactly the opposite of everything that you do in terms of comedy. It is one of those jokes so bad that you have to stare at it to fully process.
Why's the meat on the outside? Because it's a sandwich?
Bread, meat, bread.
That's too much bread.
Yeah, juicy fingers. That's the best part.
Is it even trying to be funny? Or is this like world building? No, it can't be world building because earlier we saw Buzz eating dehydrated food for his entire life. He wouldn't know what a sandwich was to begin with. Is this supposed to be like Tarantino dialogue? Is that what we're doing here? Like talking about nothing to show charm or something? I don't think so because it's not charming. I could talk about this goddamn sandwich thing for 15 minutes straight. Sandwiches were specifically invented to stop people's hands from getting all greasy. If it's too much bread, use fucking pita. Why include the bread at all? We don't put bread on a sandwich for its taste or even its texture. I know I'm harping. I understand this, but... Okay, I've been going through a bunch of popular animated movies. Every single Disney, every single DreamWorks, every single Pixar. And in doing so, I've seen some of the worst animated films of all time. Some of the worst films of all time. Shark Tale, Chicken Little, Mars Needs Moms, to even the fucking Lizzie McGuire movie. Do not ask. Please do not ask about the Lizzie McGuire movie. Lightyear's sandwich joke is the worst, most poorly constructed joke that I have ever seen in any animated film. Period. And I'm harping on it because it is the one thing that I will always remember about Lightyear. This is what the movie is to me. Backward sandwich. This is its tone. This is its craft. This is how it thinks. The incorrectly made sandwich is Lightyear's entire identity. This is what the movie is about. Lightyear and the backward sandwich are one and the same. It's to Lightyear what the holding out for a hero sequence is to Shrek 2. It's the moment where everything about the film coalesces, and you could see everything about what the film is, everything it means, all coming together in one moment. Backward sandwich is profound. Someone on this planet thought that this would be funny, and so they wrote it. And there was an entire studio who presumably said nothing. And then they had a team who animated it without question. And then there was a computer that didn't explode to take itself out of its misery due to having any involvement with this at all. Then some executives see Backward Sandwich and decide that this was the movie that they should release to get people back into the theaters after the pandemic. I died, didn't I? And I've just been in purgatory for 5 years, and this is my torment until I redress my sins and I'm finally able to reach mental peace for the things that I've done and encountered in my life. I legitimately do not have a better explanation as to why this joke made it into the film. I'm gonna go think about things for a while now.
I never asked for this.
You know what? Maybe it's not that deep. Maybe it's just stupid and this entire movie is just a shitpost. I've been listening to the Wish soundtrack again because I think I hate myself and I need help and...
When it comes to the universe, we're all shareholders. Get back to your system!
I have a job to do. Let's do my job. Eventually this happens.
Okay, be ready to launch once the fuel cell is...
Because everyone in this film is a fucking moron. And then the robots send Buzz to the Enterprise. Then we learn, oh my god, it's actually Buzz goddamn Lightyear. What? Why? Who? What? Why? What? Why? Why?
Just see the mushrooms and you'll understand.
Okay. Explain.
Robots can't quite say Buzz, so here I'm just Zurg.
Ah, yes. They can pronounce B-U-N-Z. But they can't say Buzz because...
Behold, my I don't care-inator!
Someone thought of this. Someone thought that Zurg being Buzz was actually a good idea and a clever twist, and went to great lengths to hide it from the audience.
You're you now, but I'm you 50 years from now.
So, this movie has time travel. Not just slingshot to the future time dilation, hardcore time travel, where someone goes back in time. Time travel is the hardest concept in all of fiction to get right. Even the best time travel movies of all time, such as Back to the Future, do have issues and plot holes if you get down to the weeds of it. Everyone on Earth knows that time travel like this is insanely difficult. Except Lightyear, I guess. This movie has been throwing up sci-fi and scientific concepts like no tomorrow, and it hasn't gotten any of them correct. How fast do you think this one screws up? Minute 0. Right out of the gate. We have a grandfather paradox. Zurg Buzz came back first and was about to be arrested because General McMaroon here, so he goes far, far into the future and gets technology to go back in time. But he can only go to a certain length because
my I don't care-inator!
Don't try to explain it, it is not explainable. So he goes back like a couple of months before Buzz arrives, and that stops Buzz Prime from getting arrested. Zurg Buzz, his own actions stopped his own creation, and you know what, this wouldn't be a problem. Many time travel stories are about changing the past and ignoring that what you would do would have stopped you from going back in the past in the first place. The problem is that that's Zurg Buzz's motivation. He is trying to change the past. He wants to go back to all the way when they were marooned, so they were never marooned, which means that he wouldn't exist, and it means that the Buzz that helps him wouldn't exist either.
The only thing people are gonna know is that we finished our mission.
Does that sound confusing? Because it is. It took me like 5 watches to put any of this together because none of it makes any fucking sense. And then we have our Buzz. He decides not to help Zurg Buzz because, you wanna know why?
She had a whole life down there.
What kind of life?
Okay, let me see if I got this straight. The turnip thing crashed and everyone was marooned there. You never reestablished connection with Star Command, so you were left to your own devices and someone else made a new Star Command. Otherwise, they could have sent a rescue or taught you exactly how to make hyperspeed. Everything in the movie tells me that you were isolated right here. Every member of this colony was with you on that ship, the entire time. Or did Hawthorne's wife spontaneously generate from alien vines? You could tell me that under the hood, this was all a transportation mission or something in a previous draft, but it's not established at all in the final draft. We're supposed to infer so fucking much, and any explanation you can come up with does not answer all of the questions. We never get the overall reason of Star Command's BS on the planet at all. There is no explanation as to why they were landing here unless they were to colonize it here. But then Buzz mentions you gotta get everyone home at some point. And even if they were looking for a place to colonize, that still begs the question of why they're on this death planet that's fucking tidally locked. That's like setting up a starting settlement on an ice sheet.
What?
Well, she won't have her family.
They were on the same fucking spaceship for who knows how long. Buzz's motivation is tenuous at best. Because I don't buy that these people would have never met, because this movie has a chronic allergy to fucking establishing things. It takes 2 sentences, 2, to say that Hawthorne's partner was scheduled to be a colonist on some distant rock that you were slated to leave behind. But no, the only interaction that we ever get between them is in a wordless montage because you wanted to censor it overseas. And in turn, that becomes Buzz's motive. You could have had Izzy establish things about their life and how things could have gone. That would have made sense, and would have actually given her a fucking point in this movie. And with the things you do establish, I'm thoroughly convinced that Buzz never gave a shit about Hawthorne. Because if he did, he would have stopped slingshotting himself into the future. Look, I am not going to give a shit about a character that's glanced over and killed off. And I'm definitely not going to care about a character that cares about a character that's glanced over and killed off.
I went as far as I could, as fast as I could. I traveled centuries, and I ended up in a future you wouldn't recognize.
So we designed all of this?
Oh no, this is all, borrowed.
Okay, can I ask you guys a question? What would you think if I wrote a story where a caveman pops into the present day and then goes and takes over a United States military-grade nuclear submarine? And the story I'm writing is not a comedy. I'm writing something serious. I want to portray seriously a caveman taking over this nuclear submarine that's fully maintained and fully armed. It's gonna be my most serious work of all time. Now, my question is, why does this movie think that doing pretty much that exact same thing is remotely viable? Because that is pretty much what they're telling me that Zorg Buzz actually did.
I wore my crystal out testing the time travel. Wore myself out, too.
So, you went to a future with unbelievable technology, but they didn't have any of these hyperspeed crystals then and there. Even though, at that point, it was an established concept hundreds of years ago. What is this? This is making my head hurt, that's what this is.
Oh, no, we had that all wrong. She had a whole life down there.
What kind of life?
There is exactly one difference between these two and their perspectives on Hawthorne. One of them has seen Hawthorne's granddaughter continually fuck shit up, the other one hasn't. Both of them ignored their supposed friend for their entire fucking life. I could go on and on about plot holes, but I guess a better argument is, I don't fucking buy it. I do not buy these character motivations. These characters wouldn't do the shit they're doing. Buzz is no different than Zurg because there really wasn't any development. Yes, he was with this new group of people, but surprise, surprise, them constantly fucking up at every opportunity, changing Buzz to view humanity through a better lens is just not believable. It comes down to the pacing. Because we wasted 30 minutes on characters who die and a setting that does not come back, the actual cast the movie wants to stick with doesn't get any moments to form a real identity or have any effect on Buzz.
I'm wrong with your sandwich.
So, here's something about Izzy. We get one scene where we learn that she's afraid of space. Sometime later, she has to fly through space and conquers her fear. This is irrelevant to anything in between these two plot points, and this is what Lightyear deems character development. This is not an arc, definitionally. This is not how development works. 2 points does not make a trend line, but this is how Lightyear continually works, where characters are suddenly different now because
I don't care.
Plot. Mo screws up constantly in every opportunity possible, but all of a sudden at the end, a pen is needed and he's got one, so I guess that is also an arc. Characters don't learn or grow or progress in this film. They just either have an opportunity bent to them completely, or they bend completely like they've gotten a brain-eating parasite. So they end up defeating Zurg, which is, they kill past, future, but the fucking hell with your time travel bullshit! And at the end of the movie, everyone is a space ranger. And now they have the ability to explore the galaxy and go to distant places. And Buzz finally learns how to trust autopilot. His story is complete. The fuck is this? I'll tell you what this is. This is diarrhea. It's even got the color palette of diarrhea. And the structural integrity. If I was trying, actively trying, to write the most confused, broken, nonsensical science fiction story I could possibly imagine, I couldn't get close to the plot holes, the plot, the pacing, the tone, the characters that Lightyear presents to us. I don't hate it as much as some other animated films, but I would be lying if I said it wasn't the worst put together. It does literally everything wrong. If there's a piece of lore or concept that needs to be explained for the plot, guess what the movie isn't explaining? All the characters bar one are completely unlikable. It has this weird new type of Pixar storytelling where the first half hour is one movie, and the second is another that has very little to do with the first. Stop doing this, it doesn't work. The movie is ugly, both in visuals and in spirit. It's been said that this was the movie that Andy watched that made him fall in love with Buzz Lightyear in the first place. That's the pitch. This isn't that. This is the soulless corporate attempt to make the live-action revival of that to get that fucking corporate money. It is The Lion King 2019 of the Buzz Lightyear movie that Andy watched, except somehow even worse.